Test. Test mic. Yeah, okay. It crashed, guys, so sorry. Yeah. So we're good. Are we? Are we? I'm a little bit delayed, about 10 seconds or 20 seconds delay. Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but like I said, Sfumato is not a technique like we understand technique. Like when we say technique, right? I was when they told me in the past that when they say Sfumato technique, right? I thought it was a way of doing things, and Sfumato is similar to is actually equates to glazing. And I figured out that glazing was a different you can use glazing to achieve different effects. And Sfumato is actually, you could say that it's a technique in terms of showing something, like a way of showing something. So your technique of showing something, right? So it's not a technique in a way of making an image. It's not a process. It's not a means to achieve an idea, right? But it is itself the idea. Like it is a way, it is a style, right? So Sfumato is a way of showing something. Like if you want to show this in the style of Sfumato, then we're going to have to blur the edges. Like everything is emerging from smoke, right? Or smoke coming into becoming like a solid mass. Sfumato is blurring edges, no hard edges, but you can see there are hard edges. You can say that this is a hard edge here, right? In the context of the image, but when compared to others, it's foggy, right? It's not always clear. It's not always like a line. So it's foggy. So like looking at those sepia tone photos of the 1800s, you can see that those are somewhat have Sfumato effects in the backgrounds stuff. So you could say Sfumato is a blurry image. Like painterly style is another style. Sargent style, it's another like a technique, you could say. But Sfumato is not a process. It is a way of showing something. It's a way of depicting reality. Because when we're talking about Sfumato in the background of Leonardo, then it's referring to how atmospheric effects are created, right? So he creates like all of this fog, density is there, how blue, because blue is a long wavelength, light, so you can see you can see still, you can see blue from far away. So it's what remains of the light that's coming to you from a distance is always almost bluish, yellowish. Red kind of loses its power because it's a short wavelength, but it persists in the darkness, the red. Anyway, what I've noticed about this brush is that when this is synthetic. I thought this was like a natural hair, but it's actually synthetic. So what I'm gonna do right now, I'm gonna try using this is a badger hair Chinese brush that is used for what you call that, their lettering, calligraphy. So what I did was I just used a cutter, a blade, and just kept like pressing on here and then just slowly removing some of those hairs, right, to make a smaller point here. And then what I did is just add water soluble glue here. Tip, you can just remove the water soluble glue, right, just by using your hand like that. And then here I used a TPE glue here. You can use acrylic medium, just layer it over and over. So why I did this is because I don't want to have this fold too much, because I need this point, right? I need to have like a harder point when painting, but I need it to be soft enough but not too soft. So badger hair kind of has this spring to it and kind of has a little bit of stiffness to it, and it's good for creating lines like this. The water-based glue serves as a solid, like it makes this a little bit solid here, the stump, but allows me to just remove it if I want more flexibility to this, right, and more paint to come into this. So water soluble glue will not like dissolve in mineral spirits when you wash it, but you just be careful and just do it slowly. And if it does spread apart, we can just always apply more just on the outside part, just to keep it like just to hold its shape. We can also do that with our like bristle hair brushes. Sometimes bristle hair brushes like sprays open, right? So you could just add some in the body. Water soluble glue. So I have my medium here, and the benefit of using like non-synthetic brush, like a natural hair brush like this, a badger hair, is because it allows you to use medium and paint that is not too hard, not too set, just a little bit, just not too stiff, because when it's dried up, it can get a little too stiff, right? So for very stiff paint, I'd use synthetic, and if I'm in the middle, or if I want like a wash, I'd use a natural hair brush like this. I have like Kolinsky hairs here, but I use it for smudging and like what do you call that, doing the spreading very like very soft ones. When it's very wet, I use this Michael watercolor brushes instead of synthetics, because synthetics are very hard, right? And they're very scrapey, like they can scrape. So for more set, if the paint is set, like more like stiffer, I could use this, the synthetics. But for lighter, for wetter applications, like let's say we'll work on the very thin shading here, I can use the watercolor brushes just to smudge them. But still, it's gonna require us to like be a little bit, you know, conscientious of what we're doing. We also have like an ox hair brush. So this is from the ears, but this is pentel, and it's a cheaper one, but it serves its purpose. It's really, you don't need those expensive ones. They're almost the same. There's just a small difference, but the price jump is like too much. So it's more of a luxury to have those expensive ones, and I really want to have them too. So what we're gonna do right now is I'm looking at this eye and this eye, right? I fixed this eye last night, and we drew this in freehand, so I'm not gonna expect like 100% accuracy, but I still want to make a little bit of accuracy to this. Maybe you can fix some of it. So I was looking at this eye. I see that this one is slimmer compared to this one, while in the painting it does look like this one is much more open than this one, but what we have here is too close. So I guess what we need is just a little bit of open it up a little bit higher. Okay. Here, so the angle, I think the angle is a little bit too low, but I'm still guessing because sometimes the sfumato kind of deceives you, right? The hard edge that Leonardo painted is maybe correct right here, right? But then the sfumato deceives your eye to think that this is part of the mass when you're looking at it from a distance. But then you see that there is a hard edge here for the lights, which makes the form again look like it's more angled downward right here, right? So there's movement in these lines that he has, simply because of the effect of the sfumato and the hard lines that he has below. So basically he opens the eyes using a sfumato and not a hard edge, right? But here we can see that there is a visible hard edge here, and then the shadow that drops down here kinda makes it look a little bit more open, and should based on the drawing underneath. So again, from like when you're watching documentaries, right? Like they say the Sfumato technique. Kind of use this word like the Sfumato technique, and sometimes it confuses us, especially when considering the information from an artist's point of view, and you're an artist, you're focused on process, and technique to you, to us, means a way of achieving an effect, right? So it's a technique. So when we say sfumato technique, sometimes we think that glazing and sfumato are the same when they're not. Glazing is the way that Leonardo achieves sfumato, and by that, it's what I've been describing for some time here. Like he has a hard edge below the drawing, right? The initial line, the sketch line, right? And then on top of that, he's gonna shade it with like a blurry, faded shade like this. The drawing underneath will help that layer, right? The topmost, the drawing underneath, like for example here, we have this, right? We have this drawing here. And if I put the shade on that, just like what we did here, right? The sketch underneath will still inform us, the viewer, of what the structure is, where it ends, right? But then the faded, the smoke effect then helps that to make it look it's bigger, it's deeper, or right. So in a way, glazing becomes the vehicle or the technique or the process by which Leonardo achieves sfumato. Because when you read his treatise, his advice, like do your sfumato in your style, like this. So do your sfumato while the paint is wet in your style. So for him, style is the way you, like, maybe the way the sfumato appears, right? So to him, there's no one unified idea of what a sfumato looks like. It's just, it should be like smoke coming together, but there is other ways to depict sfumato, right? There's other ways to maybe you could have a tighter sfumato, or maybe some parts are tighter, some parts are looser. Maybe you can have like a full sfumato, like Thurman's sfumato, right? So it's most likely there's a different styles of sfumato. But sfumato, in a way, is like Florent Vargas said, an ideal, right? So it's an ideal. It's a concept of having things be in such a way that it's foggy. It's like smoke, right? So it's not a technique. It's not a process. You can use other techniques to achieve sfumato, like a grisaille. So grisaille is still, it's not, we call it a technique, but it's still maybe we could say it's a technique for achieving something, right? So for achieving a type of image, then sfumato is a technique. But to create sfumato, you can use techniques like glazing, like using opaque colors. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what it is, because there are different types of sfumato. You can have different styles of sfumato, and the advice is to achieve sfumato while the paint is wet. So you're basically blurring, right? Blurring stuff while the paint is wet. For the tools, if you're using wet paint, then natural hair brushes is really the go-to, because there's no other way to lay down. If you use synthetics, synthetics should be loose enough here, the points. Like natural hair brushes like Badger, I tried using Squirrel, but Squirrel like compact, like it like they stick together too much, such that they become solid, to the point that Squirrel can be a replacement of when you're smudging with your fingers with a hard pressure. So Squirrel brushes can replace your fingers when you're smudging with pressure, right? For Badger tends to spread apart, especially if you don't feel your don't try to put too much paint, like avoid having too much paint on everywhere. But if you do have it, then it's okay, because you can just paint it down here, or you can always have a tissue paper on the side and just remove the excess there, so you can have your loose hair again. What's good about this is when I like apply it, I can control it with a light pressure to keep its shape, but then the hairs are naturally going to like loosen as it glides on the surface, so it allows the paint underneath to remain. So it's not like a synthetic, that synthetic like scrapes everything because it's too strong. If you want a scrapey looking image or application of paint, then synthetics are the way to go. If you want like a middle ground between like a synthetic, because synthetics can be like the usual synthetics we find are very thick, right? So I look for these cheap ones. So very thin, like they're trying to save on bristles, right? But it turns out to be really good. It can't hold a lot of paint, but the texture it creates is much more beautiful and much more controllable for me. For the usual synthetics, it's going to be thick, right? It's almost like triple of this. Like let's say this is a watercolor one. This is even a little bit slimmer. Like sometimes it can be as fat as this, and that's going to help us create like smooth, solid brush strokes, right? And then when we go for hog hair, if we use just a little bit of paint, we're gonna have like patches of scratchy texture, right? And if we add a lot of paint, we're gonna have like ridges, solid brush strokes with ridges of paint and scratches, right? So it's double. So if you want a middle ground, we can use something like this, thin synthetic. I have a synthetic like this. It's a little bit harder than this. This one is soft one, because this is for watercolor. And what I did was I just ran X-Acto knife over here until it became like thin as this one, right? But then I found this is very cheap. And it's better than the expensive ones that people are craving for. But it actually just depends on what you're trying to achieve. So again, natural hair allows me to softly glide a brush on top of this already existing shading here. Yeah, if I keep doing it, there's not much of a risk, right? But then again, this is dried, so. But still, sometimes even when it's dry, there's a risk of pulling up some of those parts that are not as dry as the other ones. So sometimes it's good to just let it dry completely for a week. But you know me, I want to experience the thrill. Again, Sfumato is also achieved by Da Vinci using glazing by crisscrossing his shadings. Like for example, here I did a shading that goes through like this, right? So it's from here, it goes through like this. And then later we can add the layer that goes here, which then corrects our shape, and then adds more here, and we can add more here later on, the fourth stage, to create the one here below. So it's gonna complete the shape, right? And Leonardo advises to use a soft brush for creating Sfumato. I don't know if he made his own brush, but I'm sure he did, because using like our modern brushes right now, which focuses on having too much hair sometimes, and you know, I think the best brushes are those that are broken a little bit, especially for synthetics. And there was this one guy on live chat before, I was confused. It's like, what are you talking about? Like broken brush? Why is that good? And clearly, it depends on what you're trying to achieve, right? And if you want to create soft forms, shaded forms, you want paint to pass through, right? So you need a brush that's a little broken, like blooming out. So if it's too solid, it's gonna scrape everything, right? Not only for oils, but also for acrylic, especially for creating soft, blurry smudges or paint brush strokes. If I use something that is too solid, too compact, this one I intentionally loosen this up by crimping on it, so it breaks apart a little bit. So there's micro spaces there between the bristles. This one is harder, but it has that broken tip there. So if I use something like this, right, just for example, this one is solid, it's pure, it's like compact. If I brush that on now, it's gonna scrape everything. So sometimes I crimp around brush just to make it, break it apart. If I use this, This is like a synthetic synthetic squirrel, and it was designed to clump together when wet. It's just gonna scrape everything off. And with natural hairbrush, you can have like fluid paint, fresh, medium, fresh paint. So it's fluid, and you can just add more layers to that. You can go out of it just like what Leonardo does, because Leonardo is used to drawing forms with his ink, right? So he does that cross-hatching thing, and I'm sure that's also something that he uses in his paintings. So you create like a cross-hatch first, right? And then you run through them again to blend them, to bridge the gaps. That's also one way to create shades, right? I showed you one way, which was blending with by tapping on the paint or just brushing it off. But you can also use the ink and paint method, right? That's when using more fluid paint. So where can we apply that? For like using washes, like liquid, more liquid shading, we can use that. Like for example, if I want to add warmth to this, so I'm gonna use like burnt umber and add fluid, make it fluid, add more medium to it. But my medium is has been sitting here for like 10 hours. I replaced it last night because the ones we had already dried up, so I had to replace it. You can just make hair marks here, right? This is wet, but not too wet, right? And I hope the underpaint here, the paint underneath is dry enough. So if it's wet, then it's just gonna, no matter how soft our brushes are, we're gonna pull out some. Yeah. But will that leave brush marks? Yes. It's gonna leave some brush marks, but not too much because it's wet, and they're just gonna like flow into each other, right? So the initial hatching is just to evenly distribute the paint, the majority of the fluid that we have in our brush, and then as we then go over them again, we distribute them. And of course, if you really want like a zero brush mark, you can just tap it later. Let's see, I'm wondering if we can peel this off here. No. This is the beauty of natural hair brushes too. You can use it like with pressure, it opens up a little bit. So as the area of the coverage area of the brush increase, the volume of hair that is on the surface is also lessened, which allows us to move freely without scraping too much the paint below. So it still gives us a lot of control. All this we can, of course, by experience and just by, just be conscious about when we're conscious about what we're doing. We're not just have a desired result and then just force things and then just wonder later on why the brush is not creating what we want, right? Instead of doing that, we look at the brush, we look at what we're doing, how much paint we're painting, how wet, how everything is, then how much pressure we apply and everything, and then we'll see what it does, right? We keep doing that over and over and over again until we kind of become familiar with how that works, right? So then later, if you want to create an effect, we know what to do. We know how much paint we add to the medium, how fluid our medium is, and what type of brush are we gonna use, how thick our brushes should be, right? So it all boils down to us being conscious when doing something, instead of just wanting something to come out of what we're doing without knowing what the effects of everything else, everything, paint, medium, temperature, how much is the set, how fluid everything is, how much is on your brush, how your brush works when having that much paint, right? So just being conscious, being like caring for anything else, right? Like seeing how something works. It then informs us of how something works, and then we can then employ that later on. And sometimes it's actually becomes instinctive. Sometimes you just feel like, okay, I need to get this brush now, right? Like I need to get this brush and just tap it on here without adding anything, because you know how this brush works now. Yeah, you've done it enough times to be familiar of how this works with everything else, right? Like how wet this paint is, right? So sometimes our frustrations in painting comes from like recklessness. It's not really about because you have the wrong brush, you have the wrong paint. But sometimes we don't know our materials enough, and our process, we don't know our process enough, like how much paint we use, how wet our paint is, how fluid our paint is, how much medium we use, how sticky our medium is, how dry everything is. So, sometimes the solution is right there. It's right there. We're just missing it because we're not conscientious. We're not thinking of what we're doing. We just want a result, right? So we're like kids. Like we're just trying, or like in the past, like we have televisions in the past, like tube televisions, and sometimes it glitches, right? There's something wrong with the antenna, maybe at the back, or maybe the capacitor is a little bit old. It kind of becomes or maybe the signal from the station is a little bit low, so the screen kind of becomes glitchy, right? So what we do is just slap the television and think that that's going to work. So it's causing more damage to other parts of the TV. So why, instead of looking for the correct problem, like what's the issue, how can we solve this? Like maybe it was just a loose connection in the antenna at the back, because the antenna from the ceiling, there's a wire that goes to attached to the TV behind, and sometimes that connection kind of creates like this like a liquid type thing. Like it then causes the signal to lose much of the electricity, because it's not powered. The antennas are not powered. They're just like I don't know what energy is using. Maybe it's an ether energy. It's really amazing. Instead of just fixing, wiping off maybe the excess oil from behind, maybe this can help us create a more cleaner reception. Right? Instead of doing that, we kind of hit the TV, and so it's the same with what we're doing with painting. Some people kind of become frustrated, and then they keep asking, like, what should I do, and what should I do, and they're doing the correct things superficially, but then the problem is there is no understanding of other like elements that is involved in the painting. Like sometimes if you, like for example, if you think that oil paint, applying paint to the surface is like let's say you think that it's similar to using like markers, right? The markers has a consistent flow to it. It puts out pigment or dye in a different way than using brushes, right? So if you think that that's how oil painting works, then you're gonna get frustrated, especially if you try to force that outcome to every brush stroke, for example, that you're doing. So you're forcing how a marker works to a brush, and you become frustrated because why doesn't work like a marker? Why does painting this, using this brush, using this paint doesn't work like a marker, right? Then it's just gonna create chaos in our minds, unnecessary stress, unnecessary delay, or like an excuse to like a frustration, something negative, instead of like trying out like what I love about there's this course on YouTube that I found during the pandemic, and what I like about their teaching is they start students with getting familiar with the materials. Like they have all of these exercises that you have to do, like paint solid shapes, or fill boxes with these solid colors, create create like blendings. Like there's a lot of basic information, basic I don't know if you can call it technique. So there's basic tasks that you have to accomplish, and the purpose of those is mainly to like equip or to get you familiar with the paint. And they're very strict, like you can't use any other paint, just you have to use this brand because this is what we're using here in the studio, and we want to be like coordinated, right? If you have a problem with your paint, then I can actually look into my set, like to figure out what's wrong, right? To help you out better, we have to use the same brand, same everything, right? So they give you this pack of materials. It's uniform, everything, brush, everything. So what I love about them is they teach you the basics, the very fundamental, like make you familiar with the materials. So I guess sometimes that's what's missing from people. Like on Facebook, I kind of find a lot of issues like that. Like people are having problems with their paintings and they don't know what's going on. Why is it not working? Why am I not achieving this effect? Sometimes it's all about getting familiar with your materials. Me, I didn't go through that exact regimen. Like I didn't focus on, for example, creating like those pages and pages of like for each tube, like you mix colors and then paint them, right? I don't know what's called the color charts. I never did that, but I kept that in mind while creating portraits. So while creating portraits, I kept that theory behind that every color mixes with another and it creates different shades and all that. So I kept that in mind. And you know, imagine, just use my imagination to figure out like, okay, so this is blue, this is a variant of blue, this is a variant of yellow, this is a variant of red, right? Let's go back to the paint here. I think I achieved most of how deep this opening should be, right? But I don't want to add the shadows here yet because I need to add the blacks first, but I don't want to go into that yet. I'm still thinking about how should I add more here. Maybe it's just 1 mm more. Sometimes that 1 mm can be a big it changes the image a lot. Like even the angle here, like last night I was looking at this, right? I was looking at it from far away and I thought, why is her face why is there not much angle here in my drawing compared to the reference? And come to figure out, it was here. I kind of cut this too low here. I kind of put the blacks here, right? So I cut the edge of her face around here, and that immediately made her face look like it was angled further. And right now I can see a lot of things here. It still looks like it's fading right there, but I don't want to touch that yet, because there's two areas here that I'm thinking could be the culprit. It could be this, so I'll just, when I shade this, that might correct the look of her face. Or it could be the fat here that I could just add more fat here, or just reduce this a little bit. That's gonna make her face turn lower. Or maybe there's always been that issue. So maybe this part's a little bit too far because there's no shading yet, right? So same way here, I don't wanna couple that yet. I don't wanna commit to that yet. So I wanna have the full picture, basic first layer, full picture, and then look into fixing a few things by creating shadings, right? Sfumato, in the sfumato. Like that, like shading. We can use shading. We do use shading in different ways, right? In the sfumato, it's a different way. In a painterly style, we shade in a different manner. Right? So here I have no idea yet what's the truth about this here. But what I'm seeing in the reference is that there's like a thick outline here. And it could be that maybe from restoration, maybe they added too much there, or maybe the glaze above, it's been lost. But I still need to look at this more clearly, because there's a lot of wisdom you can find here in old master paintings. They're ideas that are buried in the painting itself, like in one corner, right? Like in Vermeer's painting, I'm still working on that though. There are areas there that as soon as I understood how the truth about that, like what's the layers, the brush strokes and stuff, it kind of gave me an idea of how to work on my future projects. So copying old master paintings is not just, it's better to do it by understanding how it works, why it works the way it does. Depending on your focus, of course. Some people study it by the composition, right? We can also go into that, but me, I'm not too focused on that right now. My focus is on why things appear the way they do, in terms of with regards to paint, layers, and brush strokes. So did Da Vinci use like very thin brushes? He did. He actually does, because he likes creating those micro details. Like look at this neck area here, this rope. Look at how much detail there is. And he also likes to create all of these symbols, like embroidery. He really likes to paint those. He always has lots of embroidery in his painting, and that's gonna require like a very thin brush. I don't know what if he already has met with Chinese like calligraphy tools in the past. I don't know, but you know, trade has been widespread, like global, for hundreds of years. I'm sure China has been spreading their brushes, like even during the Roman times. Handmade. Those are handmade. Of course, Leonardo is like very inventive, and if he wants to achieve something, he can think of ways to do that. So maybe he made a special brush with like only a few hairs. Anyway, I think we've done enough for today. I think I've opened it a lot actually. And by and imagining it adding the shadows, and it's gonna create that. Right. Yeah. So I guess that's it for me for now. And hope to catch you guys next time. I hope this has been informative, and if there's any information that I got wrong, always please correct me. I love to know the truth than holding on to what I think is true. Anyway, have a nice day and bye.